In the Bible, Paul explains that everyone has two bodies, a physical body and a spiritual body. Mediums use their spiritual bodies when they act as a communication bridge between the physical and spirit worlds. As a spirit speaks, mediums hear the information using the ears of their spiritual bodies, then repeat the information to other physical people. Mediumship is synonymous with the biblical term, gifts of the Spirit. The focus of our show, Making Known the Unknown, is to provide knowledge through the use of Reverend Hewitt's mediumship and Sidney Schwartz's research. The Bible contains the history of psychic events, along with man-made doctrines created by priests centuries ago. This show will explore the untruths which the Bible entrenched into our society. By uncovering these untruths, we encourage people everywhere to think for themselves with a critical mind.
Hello, and welcome to Making Known the Unknown. My name is Tarryk. I'm your host. And with me today are my guests, Sidney Schwartz, middle school teacher from Hackensack, New Jersey, and Bible researcher of some 25 plus years. Where do you ever hear that? Welcome, Sidney.
Hi, Tina.
Hi. And Reverend Carl Hewitt, founder and pastor of Gifts of the Spirit Church in Chesterfield, Connecticut, for a few more weeks, folks. And medium. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you.
Also, may I make a note, where else do you hear the combination of a reverend of a church and a medium? Okay. With that, the topic of today's show, or the title of today's show, is Another Greatest Story Never Told. And what we're doing is continuing from our last program to go down the path that Carl Hewitt has walked throughout his entire life and try to share with you some of the many, many unusual experiences he's had and why he's had these unusual experiences. With that, what we're going to do is talk about an unusual event that happened with a light bulb. Carl, if you will.
Let me first of all clear the air here a little bit. When you mention a minister, ordained minister, and a medium, spiritualism is a religion, and in order for a spiritualist church to exist, they must have a medium. And so it's really not unusual to have a medium ordained as a minister, because we understand both worlds, and I'm not bragging when I say it. We understand both worlds. We understand the spirit world, we understand the physical world. And so the medium is actually a bridge between these two. Spirit people have always had to use a gifted person. So what is it you want to hear about the light bulb?
I want to hear about this story with a light bulb.
Okay. Well, I opened up a business in Gales Ferry, Connecticut in 1964. It was July 25th, 1964. And it was along the end of the 60s that I did the permanence along with the other staff. But we usually do have the permanence on Monday and Tuesday because that's usually the days in the beauty salon that's slower than other days. So I was doing one of my clients who was the wife of a submarine captain, and he was out at sea, and I was working at the station way down here by the door, and the other operator was working at the last station over here. There was 10 stations. And so I had my customer, I had her back towards the mirror, and she was looking straight over there where the dryers were, because the dryers were 5 over here and 5 along there, and over every dryer was a lamp for reading purposes. And so she was asking me a question because she says, I have a feeling. Now, she used to have impressions. Mm-hmm. And she read every kind of book I would suggest, but her husband would find them and burn them on her because he was, anti-everything. And so, but the night before that, I did a service in a spiritualist temple. And at the end of the service, two ladies came in with a man who turned out to be a foreman of electric boat, and he wanted me to give him a healing. And he heard a voice, and it says, "Go to Carl, he'll give you a healing." And so they helped the man in. I'm telling you, he was almost could just about walk. And so they came in, and I did a stupid thing, which I'll admit. There was no seats available anywhere, and instead of my asking somebody to get up and give him a seat, I asked him to sit on the piano stool, you know, one of those jobber-doos.
Right.
And so I went over, and between where he was and where I was, somewhere in that state, I went in totally in the altered state, which means a trance state. And they told me later that I put my hands on his shoulders and everything else, and he gave me healing, and they went away with him. The service ended, so the next morning I found myself at work, and I was giving this lady a permanent.
Okay.
And she says, "Carl, I have a feeling that there's something that is happened to you or is about to happen to you, a real wonderful experience, something." So I told her about what happened the night before, and she said to me, I feel sure that you're going to get a sign that would tell you this is what you got to do. Now, at that very moment that she said the word sign, something happened in that salon that I would never tell anybody unless I had witnesses. Because she was facing the dryers. My lady down here that Mary was working on, she was also facing the dryers. Okay. And the light bulb in the fixture came out of the fixture, still lit now. Instead of it coming crashing down, it came down like a balloon, very slow. And when it touched the carpet, it just fell over. It did, and then the light went out.
Okay.
My lady took a deep breath, and she says, "I hope nobody tells me what I think I saw." Well, this lady down at the other end there, she says, "Well, I saw a light bulb coming out of the fixture. It stayed lit all the way down, and it drifted down like a balloon." Mary, the operator down there, she says, "My God, that's what I saw too." My lady says, "Hurry up, get me out of here." Now, she'd been a steady customer of mine for months, long time. And I didn't see her the next week or the week after that. And about 3 months went by, and she called me up. I recognized her voice right away, and she says, "If you promise me that you'll be no phenomena in your salon, I'll come back because I need a permanent, and I like the way you give permanents." And I said, "I don't have nothing to do with the phenomena. I have nothing to do with that at all." But anyway, she came back. I gave her a permanent. So we talked about it, but no more phenomena. You see?
And she, in fact, predicted this.
Yeah, she was the one. She said, "You're going to get a sign.
Right.
You're going to have a sign."
Right.
Yeah.
So when this had all happened, there were other people there who witnessed this, obviously.
Yeah.
But my question to you would be, what significance was this to you with respect to the spiritual aspect of it? Did you get an answer for that?
Well, as I said the night before, I gave this man this healing, which I did not realize that spirit people were using my body as a healer.
Oh, okay.
And I'm in denial with that.
All right, I got
understand?
it. Okay. All right.
So when she said, "You're going to see a sign to tell you that this is what you got to do," light bulb.
So the light bulb was confirming what happened the night before. I got it. All right. I had heard the two stories, but I wasn't sure. So the light bulb was like adding an exclamation point, maybe almost, to that whole thing. And did you get that right there at that moment? No.
No, I didn't.
You said you were in denial of it.
Now, as I look back on it now, as I said a minute ago before the cameras went back on, I think I drove the people in heaven crazy. Because I wouldn't follow anything they wanted me to do. Just now and then I would, but most of the time I wouldn't, because I was always in denial. And I'm not worthy of this, that type of thing.
With as many experiences that I think we're going to cover, it would be fair to say that they have really been relentless trying to get through to you.
They never gave up on me.
So the light bulb, I just have to, I have to clarify this for myself here, being a, person who likes to believe in things that you can touch also. It came out of the socket, lit, and floated down.
Incidentally, that operator down there that was so scared, she went over and picked up the light bulb and came and put it in my hand. And that light bulb was cold.
Really?
It was cold. I remember her
Oh,
taking it
my.
up, and she said to the lady, "This thing is cold. It's like it's never been lit." She put it in my hand. I put it in my pocket. God knows what happened to it. I don't know.
Okay. They tell me that you had a very interesting experience in Kitty Hawk.
Oh, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Well, I was young, but instead of buying a car, a speeding car like so many kids do, I bought an airplane.
Okay.
It was an air coupe, $1,300. And I decided to go with a friend of mine. I decided to go to, it was the same friend that watched the Dove,
Really?
who swore at me so badly.
And he still stayed with you after that?
He
You
still
still
stayed
became
with-
friends? You
Yeah,
continued,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. But he wanted me to go to Florida. He wanted to go with me because his sister lived in Florida, and I think he wanted to impress his sister. You know, we flew down there on our own plane, all that business.
Right.
So anyway, we got to Norfolk. Now this is before you had to work out a flight plan
Right.
and record it. So we flew down to Norfolk, and we got to Norfolk. We needed gas, so we gassed up, and the fog was coming in off the ocean. And I called up the tower and asked them which way I should go. Should I follow over the jungles, swamps, or should I follow the Outer Banks? The guy says it's dangerous both ways because he said the way the fog is coming in, you won't be able to see the ground. And if you go the other way, the alligators are hungry in the swamps.
Yeah.
So I told my friend, and he said, "Oh, to hell with him. Let's go. We'll go around Outer Banks." And so we went the Outer Banks, and pretty soon the fog did come in so thick that we couldn't even see the water below us,
Oh, my.
and it kept going lower and lower and lower and lower. And I was afraid we were going to crash any minute because I can't see the ground anymore.
Right.
And so pretty soon, I was so positive that the wheels are turning, we're rolling. But I couldn't imagine where we are. It's so smooth. And so I slowly put my foot on the brake because it was almost like driving a car.
Okay.
See, there's two wheels, two controls, everything.
Yeah.
And I was pressing on the brake here, and I knew I was rolling. So I reached over and turned the key, the engine off, and it came to a slow stop. And then I heard the roaring of the waves breaking right under the wing of the
my.
plane.
Oh, my
It was an
goodness.
aero coupe, right under the wing of the plane. And in the meantime, he is under the dashboard here. I thought he was dead.
Were you intending on landing it?
No, well, I had to. I had no
Okay.
choice.
So
'cause
you
if
were trying, but you really had no idea where you were going
That's
or what
right.
was happening. Okay.
That's right, because if you lose your equilibrium if you don't see the ground. See,
Yeah,
you don't see
yeah.
anything. So we'd already said goodbye to each other because I mean we knew we were going to die. He was down under there praying, and so all I could hear was the surf roaring. I crawled out because it's like a convertible car because the opening of getting in it was like this. It slides down. You step out on the wing, and then you step back here on the ground. See, so I stepped here. I was so weak that I couldn't stand up. My legs, I kept falling down. I would fall down, and I'd get up and take 2 steps, fall down again in the sand. Meantime, he didn't even raise up. He was still under there. And so I noticed that there was, over here, on that other side of the plane, there was a lot of footprints going up through the sand dunes. So I decided, well, I'm going to follow that. There's got to go somewhere. And I kept falling down, got up and kept going. And then I heard a lot of voices, like excited children. Well, and I met this bunch of children, all like teenagers, and then the woman. And she said, first thing she says, "Did you see that red plane crash?" I says, "No." I said, "I was flying that plane." She says, "Well, you certainly couldn't have landed here." I said, "It did right down here behind these hills."
Wow.
And she said, and she turned to the oldest son. I think he might have been 15. He turned and he took off running back towards their house, I guess. And pretty soon, in the fog, we heard an engine, which was an old army truck. Her husband came over around the sand dunes, came down there, and he came down with 2 skiffs.
Right.
I guess that's what you call them. And we were able to, all of us together, roll the plane up on these sleds, like, and he pulled it down the beach and up over the hills and parked it right side of the main highway, which ran right up and down the beach.
Isn't that something?
Right there. And she says, where you landed is impossible. Impossible. And then the husband didn't say a word. I think he was so shocked that he's not going to get into this. And so we got over there. She took this set of keys, brand new Chevrolet Bel Air, and she said, give me the keys. And she says, the nearest city is, but what is the name of that city?
Moorhead or something?
Moorhead City. She says, go into Moorhead City. And she says, I'm sure you can get a motel or a hotel there because we don't have any room because we've got all these extra kids here. And it was a brand new Chevy he had given to her for Christmas, and she hadn't even driven it.
That was nice.
And she didn't even take my name or anything. She just gave me the keys to her car. And so we went and we stayed there. We didn't sleep all night because we couldn't bring ourselves to believe we were still alive. So the next morning, no fog, sun was shining beautiful. We got in the car and we went back over on the beach. And then we realized something don't look right here. Here was the plane sitting here right side of this road.
Right.
And right here was a great big steel fishing pier, went way out into the ocean. And over there was another pier. And that plane landed right down between those. This is where they said it's impossible for you to land here.
Really?
To this day, I just still do not know. And he explained it because he's been more research than I have.
See, I think what happened was that when, as they were flying the plane, Spirit took over his hands and took over the controls. They also dematerialized the plane, just like David Copperfield can make things disappear and appear.
Really?
That they dematerialized the plane, it went through the first steel pier and then materialized. This is why the two passengers were so tired, because it took so much energy from, they had to zap all the energy out of them out of these two physical people to cause this phenomena to happen. So they did this under emergency conditions. He has had many experiences where his life was in danger and he was saved, such as the time that you told me about. You were down south and you drove the car on two wheels, like this.
Oh my God, yes, that's another one. I don't think I told you people.
So you were a stunt double down there.
Yeah.
That was going from Raleigh to Durham, which are quite close together, those two cities.
Yeah.
But I helped a boy. I helped a young man that was walking the street that night, and he had a white stick. And as I watched him, I said, that kid does not know how to do that. That means he's just recently blind.
Oh, right.
And I went along close to him, and I says, can I be of some help to you? And he says, oh, thank you very much. God bless you, because he says, this is new to me. I went blind. And I said, what in the world happened? And he told me that his grandmother had some kind of a disease and that he had it too, and he only recently went blind and his wife left him, and he was trying to find her. There was a hotel in that area that he heard that she worked there as a waitress. And so he took out his wallet and he pulled out he went through, evidently on the corners of things in the wallet, he had them bent a certain way that he would know what they were.
Yeah.
And so he pulled out this picture of his wife. She was very pretty. And he said, they tell me that she works in this hotel. And I said, well, do you know where the hotel is? And he says, it's supposed to be on this street. Well, this is a street in Raleigh that they closed in and made it like a park. And so pretty soon we were right in front of it. Right. We walked inside and the maitre d' asked, can we be of help? And I said, well, my friend here is looking for his wife. He thinks she works here as a cocktail waitress. And so he took the picture out and he says, no, there's somebody here by that same name, but I don't think this is the same person. So he goes into the cocktail lounge and finds out, and she came out, and it is not the same person, see. I felt so sad with that poor guy. And so it was getting time for me to go to the motel because I had to get some sleep because I was booked in Asheville the next night. So I said, well, can I take you somewhere? I have a car. And he says, well, it'll be way out of your way, because he says, I go to school, and there's other people that go to school because he says, being disabled. And so there was two women that were watching, and they watched me as I was assisting him. And of course, when we met again out there, they both smiled. They seemed to be happy that I was helping him. And so I told the ladies, I said, do you know where such and such a school is? And they said, yes. They told me where it was. I said to him, I said, does that sound like the school you go to? Yes, that is it. So we got to the car, and I drove him all the way over there and let him out. I went to a convenience store and changed a $50 bill, and I gave him 5 tens, folded them in such a way the poor guy cried like a baby. And when I got in my car and I was going towards where I was staying, which was about 12 miles.
Yeah.
And way down that road, that strip was the old road. It was just as straight as an arrow. And there was a big 18-wheeler way down there coming towards me. And there was no other traffic. There was one car behind me. And as I was driving along, and I got close to that 18-wheeler, behind it, a Corvette came right out.
Oh, my goodness.
Right out in front of me, and he was really speeding. My car went off the road. There was no shoulder there. It was like a big ditch. My car went out. It didn't even lane down as if the wheels were in the ditch. It just went off into the space like this and back on the road. And when I looked in the mirror again, the big truck had stopped way down there. That one car behind me had stopped, and they were standing out in the road. I could see the gestures that they were making, like this guy was flying, and how my car went off the road, see. They kept me from dying at that time, because I would have been killed. I would have been a head-on collision right there.
My goodness.
And I was told later, because I helped the boy, it was his grandmother that also died with the same disease.
My goodness.
And she made sure that nothing happened to me.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. And I called down there to try to talk to him about 2 or 3 weeks after I returned back to Connecticut. And I talked with some woman there, and she says, who is this anyway? And I said, this is Reverend Hewitt. And she says, Reverend Hewitt, what kind of religion do you belong to? And did you know she hung up on me because I would not tell her?
Really?
And she would not let me talk to him?
Really? That's sad.
And people tell me there's no prejudice against people.
I had wondered, because this young man his story seemed kind of strange. A blind man walking down the street, looking for his wife, showing a picture, but not really knowing where she was working, how to get to where she's working. You'd think he would know. It just, some things didn't connect there. And I had wondered, because of how other stories had gone with you, if this was there also as a test to see
It was a test.
if you would reach out and help somebody.
Because you see,
they saved your life.
I don't just believe that the people in the other dimension can communicate with me and others as well. I know it.
Yeah, you're living it.
And I say to people, I know what I'm talking about. I do not have a belief system. I have a knowingness system.
Right. Wow. That's something. Oh boy, we have to keep moving along.
Yes,
There's
we
a
do.
lot of ground to cover. It's hard to get from one story to the next, because there's so much depth and so much meaning to these. Here's another situation.
Boy, he's been feeding you.
I know. There's a lot. There's another situation where we could talk about your aura. There was this impression of an aura in front of the beauty salon.
Well, when I bought this other property and opened up another beauty salon there, I had a full cast of employees, and some of these girls, when they found out, that I was a medium, all that weird stuff. Well, I was doing some readings. At the end of the reading, Spirit, my control, which is Lone Eagle, says, take your camera and run outside real quick while we hold the light and have a picture of yourself made.
Okay.
And so I went flying through the beauty salon, grabbed this girl who was new.
Yeah.
Instead of grabbing the operator, because she was quite used to this, I grabbed the girl and
Right.
says, come on outside with me a minute. And I gave her the camera,
Yeah.
and she fumbled around with that camera and everything else. When she finally took the picture,
Okay, we have the picture.
Here it
If you
is.
wanna sh-
there it is
show
there.
it. Okay,
You see how the light around me
Yeah.
is faded almost totally out.
right,
But if she would have taken the picture sooner,
right.
you would have seen me in a bubble of light.
Wow. Well, that's
would've
already
been-
pretty pronounced right
I would
there.
have been very faint in that.
So what's the significance of that light, Carl?
They do everything to make me understand that they're with me
Okay.
every moment when I'm doing this work, because I'm still in denial.
So that's physical evidence or proof
Physical
that there was an
evidence.
entity or entities around you.
Yes.
And that's how it will come out on film.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
Wow.
after she snapped the picture, the entity said, "I don't know whether we caught anything, any of the light or not on your film." But there was some.
Isn't
caught.
that something?
Yep.
And you took their direct advice and you did that,
Yeah.
and it worked. What about the gas can story?
Oh Lord.
I want to hear about that.
Well, when I first went into business, that was over in Gales Ferry. I opened up a wig shop, and I had wigs. Oh my God, did I have wigs! And it got to the point you couldn't give them away. So I was doing a lady's hair, and I was telling her about those stinking wigs I had, and she says, "Why don't you go up into northern New York, where my husband is from?" And she says, "I'll put you in touch with somebody. They don't even know what they are up there." She says, "Everybody would buy a wig, I can tell you that." So one weekend, I went up there, and with one of my employees, and we drove up. There was a long drive, way up there near, almost to Canada, and I had the whole trunk full of wigs. So that first day up there, the lady up there had booked so many people. We stood up on our feet all day long trying wigs on and selling them. We sold one to somebody. I mean, every person that came in bought a wig. And so the next morning, we were both so tired. She came down the hall, the house where we were staying, and she tapped on the door and said, "Carl, are we going to have any time at all to see anything? I'm here to go ride to see this place." She said, "I've never been up here in my life." I said, "Neither have I, and I haven't slept very well." So we decided to get out then, early in the morning, you know, this was just coming daylight, and to take a ride. Well, we thought that we were in a metropolitan area. My God, it was all woods, all woods and mountains. So we went down this road, and my red light was blinking on the dash. It was a Lincoln, and those things burn gas like, you know what I mean.
Yes.
I have a special saying that these two people know what the expression, so I'm not going to say it on the television. But anyway, she knew that that light was blinking. That means that we need some gasoline. And so we drove on. We didn't see any houses, let alone gas stations. So we kept driving, and she said, "I think we better turn around and go back. We can't afford to be stuck in these woods." And the voice of spirit told me to go straight ahead. And the guy, I went straight ahead. I don't know for how far. And then he said, "Turn right." We turned right, another woodsy road, and got all the way down there. And then there was a clearing, and there was all kind of construction trucks and things down there, caterpillars and things like that. And they told me to stop. Well, I pulled off to the road and I stopped. Meantime, we hadn't seen any cars or anybody. And she thought I was getting out of the car to relieve myself, but the voice told me to get out of the car and go opposite the car over the other edge of the field, and I did. I went over there, and there right in front of a tractor was a 5-gallon can, and I tried to lift it, but it was frozen to the ground, and so I unscrewed it, and it was fresh gas. Well, I shook it loose from the frozen ground, and I took it back to the car, and I poured all of it, or as much as I could, in my car, and because she was handling the money for
Right.
the wigs. I said, "Give me $3. Now, today, that was a long time ago when
Yeah.
gas was cheap. I think high test was 44 cents a gallon then. So I said, "Give me $3, and I put $3 over the can, and I screwed it like this, took it back, I set the can exactly where it was sitting. And after that, I thought, well, the guy ever found the money, and the can was empty,
Right.
I wonder what he said.
Yeah.
They didn't steal it.
Right.
They left the money for
Right.
it.
Isn't that funny?
But Spirit told me that they could not, that they did it only to let them know they're always watching me.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering what your friend is thinking while she's saying you better go back the other way, not into the boonies, you know, where she knows there's no gas stations, and how much she's trusting that you are trusting in spirit to make it through.
She lived down here in Old Center Groton. She couldn't wait to get back home to tell her husband, because her husband and I did a lot of fishing together. I handled his funeral. She always pretended to people that they had a very good relationship, and they hated each other. But when I did his funeral, here is his casket was spread out right in front of me, and I did his funeral, and she was over there in the back crying like crazy, putting on this show that, you know, that she cared and everything else. He appeared to me as close as Sidney is to me, and he says, "Tell her to shut up." And now, he had just left the body a little while ago, 3 days ago.
So there you are having your own private conversation with someone
my
who
buddy,
died.
my fishing buddy.
Right. See, to go along with what Carl just said, in the Bible, it taught in Leviticus chapter 21, there's a lot of commands for the priests, and one of the things that priests are not supposed to do is to attend a funeral. And the reason they weren't supposed to attend the funeral was because people back then understood that the prophets could see spirit people and relate if the person crossed over okay and everything right at the funeral, just as this man came to his own funeral. But they forbid the priests to do that because the priests weren't gifted. So this is one of the ways the priests could hide the fact that they weren't gifted, because they put that law into the Bible.
But you know, except for this woman who hated her husband, I guess, wouldn't it have been a sense of peace to know that the person passed over okay?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
That could only help people. Why would that upset people?
Everybody passes over. Okay, if you want to use that word.
Yeah.
It's better than okay.
Yeah.
Everybody, don't who they are.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what people do in life. They do it for the experience of it. Now they own it. And the religion tries to say you'll burn in hell. There is no such thing as that. That burns me up.
Yeah.
To hear them talk about that mess. That was all created by man. And when they give me this business that God wrote the 10 Commandments, if he did, he made a hell of a mistake. He didn't tell us a word about the devil. Now, for all of you people that's thumping the Bible, put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Well, how sad a lifetime to be always in fear of something. Fear of God, fear of hell, fear of doing something wrong. What kind of life is that? We might as well just stay in a box and not even come out.
Right.
I mean, what's the point of living at all? Right?
Right.
And the way, what they've told me just this week, they showed it to me and told me that the way things are going on the planet now, this world will destroy itself because of the terrorists and because of the religions that started it all, because they've got people hating each other. Because of the belief systems. There shouldn't be a belief system. There should be a knowingness system.
I think most people only go as deep as the notion that it's one government and one country versus another. I don't think that they can see deeper than that. And if you really stop and think about it, it is much deeper than that. It really doesn't. If you go back and look at all the wars that have ever been fought, it doesn't take, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. You can look a little bit deeper and you can see what were the basic differences and why did people not get along, and why did they go to war? That's it. Their belief system.
Yep.
Basic.
Which
Call
is
it religion,
nothing-
call it what you want.
Which is nothing in the world but mind control. The government teaches mind control, and the church teaches mind control. That's all there is to it. This is why they hate my guts in certain places.
But they'll use you to ask you to help them out, too.
Yes, they will.
Interesting, isn't it?
Sure
Interesting.
is.
I'm sure they have quite a few on their payroll, too, as you have mentioned before. All right, so I've got some other fun things that I hear about with your travels around the world. Everyone knows pretty much who Nostradamus was, or probably is now in another dimension. And this trip brought you to France. Who wants to start with that?
I'll start.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Tell the people that I don't have a jet that we fly around in, and that I spend my money that I earn, not from a church, I earn to do the traveling. Would you please explain that?
Okay. You just did. We were taking a trip to Spain, and we were supposed to end up in Barcelona. And the day before we left, I I decided, I looked at a map and realized that when we were in Barcelona, we weren't going to be all that far away from where Nostradamus lived.
Oh.
So I Xeroxed a map, and we were going to we were renting a car anyhow, and we ended up not going to Barcelona really, but headed off into France when we got to that part of the trip. And we went to Provence, where Nostradamus lived, and my French is, I know about 10 words, and Carl knows about 0. So, you know, here we are in the booties of France, and the little town. But I had taken a book off the shelf of my library about Nostradamus, and it had a picture of Nostradamus' house in it.
You're kidding.
So I went to this woman, and I pointed to the thing, this is where I want to go, you know? And she kind of gave us directions. So we're having trouble finding the place, and all of a sudden Carl says, there's a man, a spirit person, standing in front of us telling us we're here, but he's speaking in French. I think that's what he's trying to tell us. And we were standing right in front of it, but it was full of scaffolds. They were redoing the house. They were restoring it. So we couldn't go in and visit. So we had lunch, and we got directions to the cathedral in town where he was buried. And I was outside taking some pictures of the cathedral, and I come back, and Carl says, "Where you been?" I said, "I was just taking a picture." He says, "You're not going to believe what just happened." He says, "I walked up to the front doors of this church, and they just swung open by themselves. Spirit people opened the door for us." So we walk in, and again, there's scaffolding, all sorts of construction, lights are on. They're doing reconstruction in the church. And so we take some pictures of Nostradamus' tomb and stuff. And I go up to the front altar there was a statue of Joan of Arc there. And I was taking the picture. And all of a sudden, I felt like somebody was taking their fist and grinding it into the back of my head, just like this.
My goodness.
And I said to myself, I wonder what that's about. Let me take my picture, and then I'll turn around and find out. So I go click, and I turn around. And there's Carl, and he's going, you know, and there's this priest there who is absolutely frantic that we're in this church taking pictures. And Carl says, "Come, let's get out of here." So we went out. As we walked out, there was a little table there, and it says gendarme. There was supposed to have been a guard, a security guard there, who probably would have turned us away, but he wasn't there. So we ended up getting all the pictures that we needed, but apparently nobody's supposed to take pictures in that place.
Really?
Yeah. So Spirit worked with us to get all that stuff.
You know, unless it's a safety issue, that doesn't make any sense at all. But
well, we went to another cathedral later on, and it was the same thing. They wouldn't let us take pictures. But it was really a very strange thing, and Spirit had opened the door for us and everything else. Yeah.
Yes, they did.
Where was the one we went to that I couldn't stand to be in there because the archway was made out of the skulls of little babies?
That was in the city of Narbonne.
Tell me about that, please.
That was the cathedral that we couldn't take pictures. They had skulls, and then they had little babies' faces, and then skulls, and it was supposed to represent all the babies' bones that are paved on the road to hell who hadn't been baptized.
And they're proud of that? That's like something that they
This is what they told the young couples.
Goodness.
It's like a warning, you know, to have your child
if you're not
baptized. Right.
This is what. That's
Right.
disgusting.
Right.
And so these children do you think they were murdered back in that time if they weren't baptized?
Anything's
What did they tell
possible.
you, Carl,
Well, they
about
probably
that?
they probably dug them up just to get there to scare the people to death. That whole archway was little skulls of little babies.
And this is in France again?
Yes.
And before I went there, they told me that all babies, Catholic babies that are not baptized, you know, their bones are scattered on the road, all the roads to hell.
That's just plain sick. I'm
Right.
sorry. That's sad.
On another trip in Paris, we were in Sacré-Cœur, which is a big cathedral,
Sacred Heart.
and on top of a mountain there. And Carl kind of started to have visions about how the place was built,
Oh, God.
and he wouldn't go in. It was like, because basically what was happening was with anybody who was working on the church at the time, all the peasants and people who were working, if they fell off the scaffold, they just threw them in a pit. They didn't bother with any kind of service or anything. So he got so upset. We hadn't seen Notre Dame, and I said, well, there's no point taking him to another cathedral because he'll just have the same type of reaction.
Right. Isn't that something?
Yeah. So, and there's sometime we were also in Amsterdam once, where there was a Bible museum which I was interested to see. Carl, we absolutely refused to walk in. He says, I can't stand the vibes of this place. It is absolutely horrendous.
A Bible museum?
Yes, because of all the the dogma and stuff that's around the Bibles and things. He just couldn't stand it, so he just said, "Oh, you go in. I'll meet you. I'll take a little walk. I'll meet you outside."
So, Carl, Spirit is showing you, I'm guessing, for our viewers, visions of what had happened in these places some time ago?
They would take me back in time, Tina, to the time that they were rewriting the book and changing it, and it was awful what they did in those days. And even today, people read and they believe every bit of that, and they believe it was written by God. It was written by man, all of it.
Rewriting the book, you're referring to the Bible?
I'm referring to the Bible. It was written by man.
The Bibles, we should say, right, Sidney?
Right.
Bible, just a bunch of books put together.
Yeah. Why is it that there's still that concept that there's only one Bible out there? Because there really isn't.
No, there really isn't. The Bible is saying just about anything. Between the 300 different versions that there are, you can find different translations that say just about anything.
When he first crossed my path, he was determined to prove to his girlfriend in college that there's no such thing. This guy's a fraud, and and I'm Jewish, and I know what I'm talking about, and blah, 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 blah. And so he went out to prove it, and the whole thing backfired in his face. This is why he's a Bible scholar today. This is why he's gone through almost 300 Bibles, and he tells me they're all different, and he's proven it to me.
Well, in your first book, My First Encounter with an Angel, there's how many in there?
170.
170. And he goes verse for verse to some of the more important verses that people have heard throughout most of their lives to prove it.
Right.
And just this morning, when they told me that Jesus, now he's in the other world, he had to use Paul now, use Saul as his medium to get this last message across, to tell people that we have two. He was the one that told us through the Bible, in the Bible, that we have two bodies. We have a spirit body, we have a physical body. So they didn't put that under the actual teachings of Jesus. They put it under the teachings of Saul or Paul.
Right.
You see, they don't want people to know the truth.
Isn't it also true that Saul, not that Sidney and Saul are the same, but Saul came from a point or perspective completely the opposite from anybody who would be listening to Jesus' words or following any suggestions.
He was out to persecute them. He wanted to make money making money off the Christian captives.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I wonder if people know that.
Well, you see, just like I've had experiences, Spirit is trying to convince me that I'm gifted.
Right.
Well, when he was on the road to Damascus, he was thinking about this Jesus who he didn't know anything about, and he was bombarding the ether waves, all these thoughts of Jesus, and it was him that showed how brilliant his light was. That's what made him go blind. And he told me that he said to Saul, "Go on to Damascus, and you will have your sight back in 3 days." The Bible says that Jesus said, "I'll give you your sight back in 3 days." You see how they changed it?
Yeah, of course. Because they want to keep making Jesus more and more of somebody who's untouchable, unapproachable, and godlike, rather than a man.
And they told me that if people would learn to pray to the God within them and wake it up, then it would relieve Jesus so that he could get a little bit of peace and rest, because ever since Christianity, he hasn't had one moment of peace because of the millions of people calling out his name every moment of every day.
I can't imagine that. That's something. That's got to be something. There was something that I wanted to comment on really quickly about Nostradamus and how a lot of people and Spirit has been sharing with you that you yourself are like a modern-day Nostradamus. How do you feel about that?
That's what Spirit people tell me. How do I feel about it? It doesn't affect me one bit. I mean, some people would probably walk around with a big head or a badge on their chest, but it doesn't bother me.
And in some churches' eyes, Nostradamus was very, I don't want to say evil, but they make a lot of effort to put him down.
Yes.
They try to color him something else.
Okay, all right. Your travels now go to Hawaii.
Oh, yeah. We went to Hawaii to check out the healing centers that was there at one time.
Wow.
And we have a clip which will explain that story.
good,
So
good.
if we could run the Hawaii clip, please.
Thank you.
On the island of Oahu in Hawaii, there is an historical site that was a healing temple of the Kahuna. This site is high on a hill overlooking the ocean, and there is evidence that it is still visited regularly. I was off taking pictures, and when I returned to Carl, he had a puzzled look on his face. As he showed me his hands, blood was clearly visible. This phenomena is known as stigmata.
Boy, so you went there to
Well,
research healing centers.
Yeah, it was a healing center, and it's really a state park.
Yeah.
And there was the outline of this healing center going back probably thousands of years. And I was sitting on the stones, which was evidently the altar, according to what Spirit said. And he was off out there taking pictures. And when he came back close to me, and I said, "My hands are bleeding," and he came over, and and the sun was kind of strong. And by the time he got back there, the hands had almost dried up, the blood.
But you have that picture.
Yeah, but they were trying to tell me that, they were trying to convince me, because even at that time, I was still drifting back and forth in denial.
Really?
And then you've got to tell the story of where we took a trip by helicopter, and we went down in the canyon to this place.
Okay, if the control room could start running the pictures, and I'll explain. We were on a helicopter, and flying over Hawaii, seeing different areas. This is where we took off from, and then seeing different scenic sites. And eventually, we were going to come to us, and there was like 4 of us in the airplane. I was on one end, Carl was on the other. There was a couple in between us. Everyone was wearing headsets because the helicopter makes a lot of noise, and the pilot was explaining what we were seeing. He was taking us down in between all these things.
Wow.
And there was music playing in the background. It was called Hooked on Classics, was the album we found out later. So it got to the point that we were coming to this spot where he says, this is a spot where all the kahunas met. It was in along this area right here. He says all the kahunas would meet here, and they would have a big power meeting here at this fern grotto. Oh. And this is a picture of the fern grotto right now. Okay. This is actually when we got to see actually on the ground, inside seeing it, but we were above it. And as we got to the part of coming to the kahunas, the Hallelujah chorus came on. Right. Now, Tina, you remember that we've shown a clip from the Golden Thread, the slide production that we did, which used the music from the Hallelujah chorus in the background and showed where all the gifts of the spirits were and everything. Right. Everything. We had done that at that point. Okay. So Carl and I both went and started to look. We bent forward and looked at each other because we were hearing the Hallelujah chorus here at the spot where all the psychic phenomena took place, and we just thought that was a real powerful coincidence. So when we got off, because the music was so well timed to what we actually sing. Right. So when we ended the tour and we asked the pilot, "What were you playing?" He said, "Oh, we were playing Hooked on Classics." I keep wanting to say Hooked on Phonics, but it's Hooked on Classics.
You're a teacher, Sid.
I know.
That's okay.
So he said, so I went to get the album later on and discovered the Hallelujah chorus is not on that album. It's not there.
Well, no, I wouldn't think Hooked on Classics includes the Hallelujah chorus.
So in other words, spirit people provided the music for us over that site, and we were the ones to hear it.
Unbelievable.
And it wasn't on the album.
Right. This is tremendous. I have a hard-hitting question here about the stigmata, signs of the stigmata. I have my notion of what the answer is, but I'm not sure what you're going to say. Because of the recent shows that we have done where Spirit has come through to you and has said that Jesus was hung, not crucified. I'm wondering, not just for your purposes and your personal experience, but for other people throughout the world who are being shown the signs of the stigmata. What do you think the significance of that was? I mean, other than to get your attention, which obviously they did.
The stigmata, as far as I'm concerned, it shows that the spikes went through both hands, and and how they bled.
Okay.
I don't know of any other reason for it. I don't know.
Okay. Do you think that Spirit was just honing into the belief system that most people would have, that Jesus really was crucified because they had to connect with them on some level?
It's possible.
It would be a symbol that we would accept. So the meaning was correct, even though maybe the actual fact wasn't.
Yeah. Okay. Because, and maybe when I say this, I have the impression maybe you don't remember talking about that. But that did come through in one of our most recent shows, and I found that fascinating.
Well, I have to be honest with everybody that's watching this program. I don't have all the answers, and there's a lot of times there's things I don't even touch
Yeah.
on. I tell him, and sometimes he don't even nod or grunt or anything. So I feel he doesn't even get it, so I don't bother bringing it up at another time.
Okay, all right. Thank you. That's fair. I have to ask. All right. Now you're heading to Greece. What happened there?
We had a lot of interesting phenomena happening in Greece, including the most profound is the one that we did on the video clip. So why don't we run that
okay,
now?
good. Let's run that too.
And that reminds me.
We were driving back from Dodona towards Athens when we were passed by a black Jaguar with Florida plates. We had stopped at the scenic overlook, and I was just taking this picture when the black Jaguar pulled in. The woman asked me if I knew the way to the ferry. I told her no. She then asked me, where were we going? I heard Athens come out of my mouth, although I was going to say the name of an oracle site we were trying to find. She explained that the ferry was in the next town and would greatly shorten our trip to Athens. She had answered her own question and drove off. We studied the map, only to discover we could visit Corinth and Mysia by taking the ferry, which we did. After the ferry ride, we found ourselves at the seaside resort with many high-class motels. Most of them were closed because it was off-season. We found one that was open and took a room with a balcony overlooking the water, which turned out to be the Bay of Corinth. Later, as we were sitting on our balcony and as we looked out, much to our amazement, we saw a cloud formation, which was an almost exact copy of the church logo. I quickly got my camera and photographed it. It was 2 weeks later when the full impact of this event occurred to me. Carl's church is called the Gifts of the Spirit Church, from 1 Corinthians 12:1. I shall not have you ignorant of the gifts of the Spirit. Paul had sent this message to the city of Corinth. Now, nearly 2,000 years later, in our presence, the logo that Spirit had clairaudiently shown Carl for the church was in the sky over the very city of Corinth.
Thank you, Sidney. That was very interesting. And for our viewers, old and new, when you see the beginning and the end of the show, that's where that picture's from.
Yeah.
So you'll have that understanding and that knowledge.
Yeah, it really brought everything full circle because, Paul wrote the letter to the city of Corinth saying, I want you to know the gifts of the Spirit. I will not have you ignorant in the gifts of the Spirit. And here we were, and then they put that as the logo of the church, and here we were looking at Corinth, and there it was in the sky.
Right.
It was really very powerful.
Wow.
It was so powerful that it took me 2 weeks to realize it.
Isn't that
It was
something?
like I didn't realize it was over Corinth until 2 weeks later. I called him up. I said, "Did you realize that?" He said, "No," because
you
it was
had
both.
traffic.
It was so overwhelming.
Wow.
It was so powerful that I drank 2 whole bottles of Merlot wine.
Well, you had a healing that
I'll
night.
shock some of the people out there. I had to drink that much in order to sleep. I was just in such overload.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, and this was a culmination on this trip. When we first got to Greece, we quickly took a quick nap, and then we went out to dinner. And after dinner, it was like somebody grabbed my shirt and was just pulling me. And we walked and walked and walked, and we ended up at this one site where it was right underneath the Parthenon, and on this big stone. And the next day we went to visit the Parthenon, and we hired an English-speaking tour guide. And she just happened to point down, and while we were up there that night, Carl said, "We've been here before. You and I have been here before." And so I was at the next day. She points to the spot we were the night before and said, "That's the site where Socrates was tried and convicted."
Really?
And I had asked a question years ago at a seance about Socrates, and there was a connection between Carl and his Indian guide and Socrates. There was one of them had been reincarnated back into was Socrates and now in their present life. So that was one of their past lives. So basically, he had confirmed what what he said the night before, that we were both there, but he didn't even know it, because he didn't know that information because he was in trance, and I was told
Right.
not to tell him at that point.
Oh, okay.
So that happened there. Then we went to Delphi. Which was a very powerful place. Carl went into trance, and A1 came in and talked with us.
Okay.
And the most powerful thing I said to A1 at that place, because it makes an impression on me. I said to him, it's really something that everything you say, I'm able to prove with a book, with documentation. He said, we've designed it that way so that there will come a time where there'll be some things which you cannot prove, and people will believe you because you've proved everything else.
Oh.
So I thought that was quite interesting. And then on the way back, we had this experience with the logo in the sky.
Was that your first communication officially with A1?
No, this was
okay.
even almost, the book was finished at that point.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Sid can back me up on this, I think there was a group of the students, we went down to Disney World, and we were staying on the Disney premises there, one of those places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And because every evening we all together, I mean, somebody wants me to go into trance or have a session or something, and what was it? Wasn't it there?
Yeah, that was in Disney
I
World.
went into trance, and this guy came along and gave his name as A1.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time.
That was the first
See, I
time.
miss out on everything.
Well, you know what? Tape recorders don't lie. Videotape doesn't lie. And you have that.
That's true.
Yes, you do. For
Yeah,
many
but
things.
I love to get together with a group of mediums. I'm talking about genuine mediums. And the phenomena is absolutely out of this world.
Maybe that's something
But
that...
I want to warn the people that watch this tape. If somebody tells you they're a medium, you make sure that you know for sure they're a medium. There's a lot of people that call themselves mediums. They're not. They're not even well done. They're not even rare. They're not mediums. I hate to say it.
Well, what I was going to say is when you get to your new location in South Carolina, it would be exciting to have some genuine mediums join you.
I'm going to have them. I've already contacted some of them.
Very good.
And if I have to pay their transportation down there, I'll do that too. Because I want the people that cross my path to know the truth. Because you see, people, every one of us going the same way.
We have just a couple minutes left, and we have a very quick clip of a wedding ceremony.
Yeah, it's actually a still picture. It was where the spirit was telling Carl not to marry these particular people, and
Whoa.
the bride. What's happening here is that spirit people withdrew ectoplasm from Carl's body,
Right.
and formed a pillar of cloud to protect the bride, because basically the man there, and this picture was doctored. We diffused the faces to protect the people's identities on it.
Okay.
But that's the only doctoring of this this picture. The man was into rough sex, and he eventually broke the bride's arm and so forth.
Oh, my goodness.
Much later. So what he was picking up on was true.
Wow.
She would not
you.
listen to what came through the reading prior to the wedding.
Whew.
And I didn't want to do the wedding either.
Yeah.
But,
You try. I know you try.
you know.
But some people need to go through whatever experience, I guess,
Yep.
to learn the hard way, maybe. Sad. Well, we have just about 1 minute left. I wish we could talk longer. I want to remind our viewers again that you can still purchase this book, My First Encounter with an Angel, Revelations of Ancient Wisdom.